Hello, this is the Travel Ball Dad, and I'm sitting here with Dr. Jim Taylor, sports psychologist and father of two youth athletes. Jim, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Great to be here, John.
Excellent. I'm in Louisville, and Jim, you're out in California, just north of San Francisco. The weather is probably a little bit different than it is here today. But Jim, thanks for joining us today. Jim's been very successful in bringing to light a lot of issues at the youth sports level, and nationally, globally acclaimed psychologist as it pertains to this subject. And what I wanted to do today, Jim, is kind of talk about what you're seeing on your side with the youth sports industry, the good, the bad, and maybe give parents an opportunity to help educate themselves and maybe not make the same mistakes others have, because we can always learn from others. And sometimes we do what we think is right, but in reality, it may not be. So if you could kind of dive into what you're seeing today on the youth sports area. And before we do that, though, Jim, give us some background on yourself as well as your kids.
Sure. So I grew up in New England, and my sport was alpine ski racing. Yes, I played Little League and soccer and those kind of things, but early on, ski racing became my thing, and I went to a boarding school in Vermont and for ski racing, and I competed internationally, made the bottom of the U.S. ski team, competed Division I in college, won a national team champion, an NCAA team championship.
Wow.
So sports have obviously been a very big part of my life. And then I went on to get my PhD in psychology. And for the last way too many years, I've been working with young athletes and families to help them achieve their goals, as well as just to become successful and happy people. And so my passion is sports, sports psychology, and kids and families.
Excellent. And your kids, what sports do they do? You've got a skier in there.
Well, I have two daughters, they're 12 and 10, and primarily they're ski racers as well. They're following my footsteps for now.
Wow.
And which presents its own challenges, of course. And they're also swimmers. So they're still early in the ladder, but more than anything, they just love to ski and love to be on the mountain, and they love to compete. And so far, they've had a really great attitude about the whole thing.
And how long have they been doing it competitively, Jim?
Oh gosh, they started skiing when they were about 3, and so they've been racing since they were about 6. And just in the last couple of years, they've gotten really serious about it. So in fact, we're going up on Sunday to start skiing at the beginning of the season up at Squaw Valley, and then up at Sugar Bowl in Northern California, which is our home mountain.
You know, in travel sports, you know, when you say travel sports, people's heads may go to baseball, softball, basketball. The swimming and the skiing may not be top of mind when it comes to the travel sports. However, you've got to go where the slopes are. You've got to go where the swim meets are, right? And you're just as busy, if not more, the early morning rises, the competing late.
Yep.
I can only imagine the amount of hours invested by the kids as well as the parents.
Sure, and it doesn't matter what sport it is, whether it's a traditional team sport or figure skating or skiing or tennis or golf or whatever it might be. It's a tremendous commitment on the part of parents, both in terms of their time, their energy, and obviously money, that's for sure. And so this idea of having to travel applies across any sport. So you don't have to be a ball sport person to have these same challenges.
And that's something that, whether it's cheerleading, skiing, swimming, there's so many other things that don't have a ball in there that, we're invested just as much time and energy, which, not to beat a dead horse, but there is a commitment there, and it's pretty awesome. So 10 and 12, I've got an 11 and 13. So we've got kids in the same range and going through some of the same challenges from a mental perspective. Mm-hmm. And I'll just share with you, sometimes my kid, sometimes I feel like there's too much going on, but, at any point when they say they don't want to do it, guess what? We're not going to do it. So I like to think I'm not that kind of dad that keeps pushing and living vicariously through my kids. But you do see that from time to time, and it's unfortunate. Given the day and age that we live in from a youth sports competitive aspect, what are some of the things, the glaring pieces that you're seeing out there that you wish you didn't see?
Yeah, well, first of all, an overemphasis on results at an early age. Parents are so concerned that their kids, they have to be successful at 6, 7, 8 years old, and they lose sight of what will actually, first of all, keep them in the sport and ultimately help them become successful. So, for example, a very well-known statistic in sports psychology is that between the ages of 9 and 13, 70% of kids drop out of youth sports. The number one reason, it's not fun. And other reasons are it's stressful, they feel pressure, they're overscheduled, it's exhausting. And so if parents can just stay focused on the fun and getting better early on, then they will be more successful later on, partially because they're more likely to stick with the sport. But there is a youth sport culture that's really gone off the rails, where it's all about early winning, early specialization, early results. A couple of statistics on that. Do you know how many baseball players who played in the Little League World Series went on to the major leagues?
I don't know that stat, but I bet it's minimal.
Well, it's 33. Wow. 33. Consider the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of young baseball players who have been in the Little League World Series over the past decades. Only 33 made it. What that basically says is that just because you're good at 10, 11, 12 doesn't mean you're going to be good at 18, 19, 20, or 25. And so it's really important for kids to just be out there, and the focus is on fun and improvement. Unfortunately, another shift I've seen is away from just fun and participation. And what's been created is what I call the youth sport development industrial complex. And I'll admit that I'm a little part of that, I will say. And what it is that summer camps, private coaching, private clubs, travel teams, it's so focused on people who develop these programs making money. And I'm not saying that they're bad people or that they have the bad intentions, but with that kind of pressure, parents are surrounded by messages from the youth sport culture saying, you got to win, baby. You got to get them specializing early. When in fact, all the experts, including myself, and all the research suggests that early specialization actually interferes with athlete development and simply athlete participation. Injuries and burnout are much more common among kids who specialized early. And if you talk to a lot of coaches in a lot of sports, they want well-rounded, all-around athletes because they become better baseball players, football players, basketball players, tennis players, etc. And we hear about many of the great athletes who were basically born and raised to be professional athletes, whether it's the golfer Michelle Wie, the tennis players, the Williams sisters, but Jordan Spieth, I never can figure out what his name is, one of the top golfers in the world. He didn't commit to golf until he was 14. And so the experts and the research says it's better to slow the kids down. And ultimately, you want your kids to participate because they love doing it. Now, they're not going to love every moment of it, and there is certainly a place for parents to push their kids. Like, you want to quit in the middle of the season, or you don't feel like going to practice. You know what? You made a commitment to the sport, to your team. We made a commitment as your parents as well in terms of time, money, and resources. So yes, you have to go out there and practice. You have to finish the season unless there's something really bad happening. And then we can reevaluate. Because if kids are let off the hook when things get a little hard, well, you know what? As you all know, life is hard sometimes. And it's the ones who simply stick with it and gut it out and just deal with it are the ones who are ultimately going to become successful.
I was speaking to somebody. Matter of fact, I was speaking to Joe Arachi, Joey's dad, and he had a similar thought, or he was told something by a coach that he referenced, and he had a similar thought, that there is burnout that occurs. However, the ones that push through, those are the ones that have the success, similar to the comment you just made. And it exists, right? Kids are going to get tired. They go through these peaks and valleys, I'm sure, but pushing through when you don't want to, that it says a lot.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's also important to respect kids and understand the lives they lead these days. Kids these days are so much busier than they were in our generation because they've got hours of homework, they've got conflicting schedules, they've got music lessons. So there is a time to have downtime. And I think it's really important to look for those opportunities, whether it's nothing going on Mondays after school, or having a weekend where, we're just going to hang out as a family.
Right.
Because what often can happen with families is they get disconnected from being a family. So mom and dad are going in opposite directions, And kids, if you have multiple kids doing different sports, they're going off in separate directions. They're missing dinner. They're not able to be together. And for me, it's all about family. And that's one thing I love about our sport is that we can ski with our kids. We can be out there with them. And so I want to share the experience with them. And you can do that in a lot of different sports, whether it's going to the park and kicking it or throwing the ball around or shooting hoops with your kids, is that it should be a family thing and it shouldn't take over your life. And I think another thing that's really important for me is that parents and kids and families don't just get on the train because everybody else is getting on the train. For me, sports participation for kids is about values. It's about, is it something that I value? And are what the kids going to get out of it things that I value and things that we value in our family? So it should all come from a deliberate discussion of, okay, what do we want our kids to have? What kind of kids do we want our kids to become? And what are the settings, what are the activities in which they can participate that will enable them to develop those values and be those kind of kids? And so if you as a family decides that playing baseball or football or skiing or tennis or whatever it is, if that's the road that you want to be on, great, throw yourself into it. Because the fact is that we don't want to tell our kids, no, you can't do that if they have a passion for it. Mm-hmm. But we also have to recognize the impact it has on us as parents in our relationship, because the happiest kids come from the happiest marriages and also the happiest families. And so sports participation should always be thought of in the context of the family and what's best for our family.
Well said. And more times than not, that gets lost in translation. It really does. Wonderful. Well, let me ask you this. You've got a lot going on the psychologist side of things. How can parents find those resources to help them address these challenges? What resources do you have available that they can go to?
Sure. I have a website. It's drjimtaylor.com, Dr. Jim Taylor, and a couple of places people can go to learn more about how to be a better sports parent. Because for me, I not only talk about it, and it's easy to be an expert until you actually become one. And so I was an incredible parenting expert before I had kids. Right. And then I became a parent, and I approached being a sport parent and a parent in general with tremendous humility, because it's a hard job and I don't have all the answers. But hopefully I can ask a lot of good questions and get parents to think about what the answers are and maybe offer some answers that might in fact work. So going to my website, if you go to my blog, I have two sections, one on sports and one on parenting. And in those I have literally hundreds of articles that people can read to learn about different things about how to be a better sport parent. I'm actually working on a new book. I'm actually literally on Monday sending in the final draft to my publisher for a book titled Raising Young Athletes. Prepare your kids to win win in their sports and in the game of life. I don't even remember the subtitle.
Good title. Awesome title.
That'll be out in 2018. I also have a newsletter you can sign up for, where every couple of months I send out an article about being a sport parent or how to help kids improve their performances. And perhaps the most exciting thing I'm into these days is I offer an online course on sport parenting. And it's on demand. You register and you get access to these links to these four classes, and where I basically guide parents through some areas that I think are most important. And so if you go to my website and on the top menu it says online courses and you click on Prime Sport Parenting. So those are a couple of areas. And also if I can help in any way, I love getting calls. I love getting emails from parents saying, I've got this question. I've got this situation. How do I deal with it? Mm-hmm. While also trying to convey the fact that I'm often asked to give a 1-minute answer to a 3-hour question.
I can only imagine.
Because there are no easy questions. But I work individually with a lot of kids by Skype as well as in person. And I work with a lot of parents too who are simply trying to figure it out. And simply having a resource, a sounding board, somebody who can offer them different insights and information to help them be the best parents they can be, then that's also what I do. Because for me, what I've come to recognize is that all parents are well-intentioned. They want what's best for their kids. They love their kids. But there's no instruction manual in being a sport parent. We often make mistakes, and I include myself in that category. Mm-hmm. And so the important thing is giving these well-intentioned parents the information, the insights, the tools they need to be the best sport parent they can be. And the upside of that, of course, is two things. Their kids prosper, both as athletes and as people. And as a parent, it feels good to do the right thing. And that's why we're in this game of not only of sports, but also this game of parenting and family and life. And so if I can be a resource to anybody, I absolutely welcome the opportunity.
In hearing you say that, it's not uncommon for parents to seek out pitching help or hitting help mechanics, for example. The mental game is just as important, if not more so, to be in that, both in the parent as well as the youth athlete. And I see tremendous value in what you're providing. So,
well, I appreciate that, and it is interesting that parents spend all kinds of money and devote all kinds of time to private hitting coaches and other kind of conditioning coaches and so on. And yet, the one piece of the puzzle that every great athlete, every great coach will say is essential is the mental side, and how much time is devoted to that. And that's the role I try to play, is to educate parents, kids, coaches, and teams about how to incorporate mental training and mental preparation into their overall athlete development. Because an athlete can be incredibly well conditioned, have great technique and tactics, but if their head isn't together on game day, it ain't gonna happen.
Right.
And so I really encourage parents to think about that and devote time and energy to helping their kids prepare mentally. Because when we talk about mental training for sport or sports psychology, it's really none of those things. What it really is about preparation for life. Because all the things I talk about with parents, with kids, yes, it will help them improve their performances in their sport. But more than anything, these are life skills and life tools they can use for the entire life in school, in sports, in their social life, in their careers. And so it's really about developing great, successful, happy, value-driven kids.
You touch on something, the life lessons. Kids can only play sports for so long, right? And hopefully they play as long as they want to, but sometimes it doesn't happen that way. But to build them, to provide them a foundation for success after sports, invaluable. So thank you.
And I mean, ultimately, as you suggest, kids are going to aspire to greatness. Maybe if they're in a sport, if they play professionally, they'll most likely be retired at 30 or 35. Most kids, they're going to be done after high school. But that doesn't mean, that they can't develop a tremendous love of sports and being physically active and continue that into adulthood, whatever your sport is. But more than anything, again, is when they finish their main focus of their sport, going out there in the world as people, and are they ready to be successful and happy?
Wonderful. What's your social handles, Jim?
Oh, yes. So I'm on Twitter. I think it's Dr. Jim Taylor, and Facebook, Dr. Jim Taylor as well. And I'm also on LinkedIn, same thing. So easy to like me or follow me. And I put everything I write up on my social media.
Wonderful. Well, we thank you so much. Hang out 1 second while I stop the recording, but thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Great fun.